So I'm 6 years in, and I'm really feeling it. But this thought occurred to me, and I just had to get it out into the ether. And when you talk about antinatalism, you're also talking about maybe not just the state of the world, but you're talking about the future as well. And I think there's a lot of talk, especially considering Earth Day, about the state of the future and the state of the present, and and how those things relate. Now, antinatalism is static in the sense that it just says that there is human suffering, and there's a certain statistical truism to human suffering. Like, I mean, there just is. Like, I mean, humans suffer. They have suffered. They will suffer. Blah 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 blah. But I think when it comes to moral progress, there's something that ties in, and kind of there's a Venn diagram when it comes to capitalism as well. Capitalism is all about the narrative of competitive ideas and competitive technologies and uh, economic uh, competitive economic prowess. So everything, I guess, at the end of the day, you could say everything is based on some sort of forward-moving uh, momentum. Maybe time in the universe, time only moves forward, and we haven't been contracting just yet. So I mean, life goes on. But the thing is, the thing is, when it comes to let's bring it back down. Let's bring it back down, and let's talk about environmental problems and antinatalism. So, the birth strike movement seems to hit the chord right away. I don't think that the birth strike movement is particularly philosophically sound. There have been people that have been exposed to antinatalism less than less than 50 years ago that have still managed to have kids. They've looked at things like abortion and birth control and family planning, and they have not seen the benefits of not having children. And I mean, there's an individualistic aspect to antinatalism where you yourself have to come to the realization that you do suffer and everybody else suffers by that kind of theory of mind. Um, but on a societal level, I mean, there's basically institutions that project this weight on procreation, on having children, and doing all this stuff, and it kind of overrides the individualistic nature of actually having children, actually having to suffer through. Look, I've seen family members who have had kids that have suffered quite greatly, and even if their standards of living have become normalized based on having children, you could say, based on less than erroneous expanded scientific studies, that their lives would have been better off if they did not have children. On a very personal note, they would have been happier if they did not have children. That just seems to uh, hit a chord and make sense. Like I said, I'm going back to my personal experience, but I've seen family members that have had their lives impeded upon, and and really kind of destroyed by having children. And sometimes even this idea of children in a biological sense still kind of goes into, say, maybe something like adoption, right? Like, I mean, adoption is an uh, antinatalist virtue. It really is. On some levels, like, I mean, not all levels, but I mean, antinatalism does purport a certain amount of adoption kid-like things that don't happen biologically, and I think in that biologicalism, there is an immorality. But like, I mean, just out of effect. But I mean, to say that adoption is completely altruistic, I wouldn't even say that to begin with. I mean, there is this propensity and this need to have children, but I mean, as much as the poor thing has been born, like I mean, you might as well take care of it, blah blah blah. So this stuff does happen. Um, so I forget my original point. Like I told you, I was really drunk. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but I kind of have to say it. Um, are there economic factors to antinatalism? Well, there's economic factors to any philosophy. If you're a philosopher, like you do have some sort of situative aspect to what your philosophy is and economic circumstances. Um, I mean, nihilism maybe kind of, if you start experimenting with it, kind of says nothing is nothing. But I mean, as much as we place importance on ourselves, I think antinatalism does give back a little bit of a throwing upon the issue of throwing upon. I'm also drunk, so but I mean a bit of a antinatalism does actually take a little bit of nihilism. It takes a little bit of, forgive me for being creative, but like, I mean it takes a little bit of it takes a little bit of nihilism, but it also takes a little bit of extreme sort of morality and kind of throws it back in the face of a person that exists. And we have to deal with it. But we also, as much as things exist, we also have to deal with markets. We also have to deal with free markets, and I think that free markets have to be allowed to be competitive, depending on what your goal is. But let's talk about antinatalist, and this is something I'm gonna look up. I'm especially gonna have to look it up now because I'm drunk and I'm coming up with this shit, and now I'm gonna have to look into it after I make the video, and I'm gonna upload the video. But I'm gonna have to like look at antinatalist capitalism. The bird strike movement comes close, but there's only 300 people on the Facebook page and blah blah blah. But like I mean, I'm thinking antinatalist capitalism. Like what is that? What is that gonna look like? Who knows? Euthanasia comes close. I mean, California was worried when they enacted their euthanasia laws. They were actually very concerned with euthanasia becoming a capitalistic venture as opposed to a medical venture. They were worried that there would be financial interest in basically people fucking offing themselves. So, like, I mean, what would an antinatalist, which automatically, as small as the movement is, what would an antinatalist capitalistic structure look like if people are more thoughtful about what they do and what they say and blah 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 blah. So I'm sure I totally lost my train of thought on all of this, but like I think antinatalist capitalism, well, birth control. I mean, there's some sort of tampons, making non-sexual encounters very pleasurable. So basically, not non-sexual, but non-procreative encounters very pleasurable, and highlighting that carnal pleasures are pleasurable without having to have kids. So condoms and tampons and sponges and drugs that can do these things. Maybe drugs that heighten sexual pleasure as opposed to the pleasure you get from thinking you're gonna have a baby you. Maybe surrogates, like, so maybe dolls and dollies and maybe voodoo pin dolls, or maybe, I don't know, like, I mean, you kind of want to highlight orgone. You kind of want to highlight sexual pleasure, carnal pleasure, much more than you highlight the procreative, like I just said, procreative aspects of sex. Like, you don't want to feel like you're having a baby. Like, I mean, you don't really want to feel that. I don't know. Like, I mean, antinatalist capitalism would seem very, almost way more innovative than just the wild creative energy that people have when it comes to just producing kids and kids upon kids and upon kids upon kids upon kids. Like, I mean, it would actually take effort to be innovative to deal with the lessening of human impact on the planet Earth. Um, it just would, and it would make capitalism even more maybe intense. I don't know, maybe that's a bad thing, um, but at the same time, understanding that there's suffering and weird shit going on. So antinatalism does not actually talk about the immorality of not having life. It talks about the morality of not having life. But yeah, that's it. I'm done. Bye.